getting ready to cook up my supper here tonight. Didn't have any luck hunting again, so we're just going to be cooking up some potatoes and eggs. But I thought that this would be a good opportunity to talk about how you can improve your cooking in the outdoors. I'm sure that we have all been there where you are looking forward to cooking up a great meal. You get all your food ready to go, throw your pan over the fire, drop your food in there, and it sticks. And you reach for your spatula, you're poking and prodding at your food to get it unstuck, and you end up with a burnt mess on the bottom of your pan, a scrambled mess of your meal, and it ends up being a lot less desirable than you had hoped. For this camp, I brought 2 skillets. This one is a sheet steel skillet, and this one is a stainless steel. You may notice both of these are full-size skillets. That is what I prefer. You might see a lot of people using really small skillets, 5 or 6 inches in diameter. In my opinion, those aren't worth it to carry. You're far better off just sticking with a full-size skillet. What happens with those small ones is you're either not cooking enough food to fill you up, or if you try to cook a full meal in one of those, you end up overfilling the pan with your food, and as you're trying to stir it up to cook it, you end up with food spilling over the edges, and it will also take a really long time to fully cook your meal because so much of that food is up off the bottom of the skillet. So, in my opinion, you're far better off sticking with a full-size skillet. It's going to make your life a lot easier, and your meals are going to cook up a lot better. So this method for developing a non-stick coating on your pan is going to work with pretty much any material. So whether your pan's made out of aluminum, whether it be cast aluminum, plain aluminum, anodized aluminum, sheet steel or carbon steel, cast iron, stainless steel, this is going to work across the board. And I developed this technique based off my experience with cast iron. And I call it a pre-seasoning. Basically what we're going to do is put a tablespoon or 2 of oil in our pan, place it over our heat, and we're going to bring it up to temperature to the point where the oil begins to smoke. We're going to bring the oil up to its smoking point. When the oil begins to smoke, what happens is it begins to polymerize or harden. And when the oil begins to polymerize, what it does is it begins to bond to the steel. In cast iron, that's how you develop the nice non-stick coating. The oil begins to polymerize or harden. It becomes a dark color. And as you develop those layers of polymerized or hardened oil on that cast iron, that's where it gets its really dark color from. This pan here is a steel pan, so the oil bonds pretty readily to steel, carbon steel, or cast iron. In something like stainless steel, you're not going to get nearly as well of a bonding between the hardened oil and the surface of the steel. But this pre-seasoning method basically develops a really thin layer of that polymerized oil on top of your skillet, which gives you a nice non-stick coating to work with. Like I was saying, in a sheet steel or carbon steel or cast iron pan, you can develop that layer of oil over a longer period of time. That oil is going to bond quite readily to the surface of the steel, and so you're going to end up with layers of that oil developing, which is what gives those pans their dark color. Since the oil won't bond quite as readily to stainless steel, over a long period of time, if you try to build up that dark patina of seasoning, you'll probably find that it just begins to flake off after a few uses, and you end up with patchy areas, and typically you end up with more shiny areas than you do seasoned areas. But with this method, what we're going to do is just give a quick pre-seasoning to these pans, develop a real thin layer of that polymerized oil, and that's going to give us plenty of protection and non-stick coating for our skillet that we can cook our meal. When we're done, we'll wash it. Then the next time we use it, we just repeat the process. It's very easy to do. It only takes a couple of minutes, and it makes our cooking experience a lot better. So you can see this is a cold skillet. There's no heat in it yet. I put about a tablespoon of oil in there, just enough to be able to swirl it around the pan, coat that inside surface. And this is just a plain stainless steel skillet. There's no special coating on it or anything. And all we're going to do is put this over the heat and bring this oil up to its smoking point. Once it begins to smoke, I usually like to let it go for about a minute or so of good heavy smoke, and then just keep rotating the oil around the pan. And then it's good to go. It's really, really simple. I mean, when you're cooking in the outdoors especially, you got to build your fire up, and this is a great time to do this when your fire is good and hot. Just pre-season your pan, then when you're ready to cook, after your fire's died down a little bit, you can go ahead and cook in it, and you're not going to get any sticking. In regards to stainless steel specifically, I have seen some people talk about getting the pan up to a certain temperature prior to cooking, and then once it's at a certain temperature you can cook in it and you won't get any sticking. But for me that doesn't really work, because like tonight I'm going to be making eggs and I don't want to cook them over a super high heat. So this method creates that non-stick layer on the inside of the pan, which allows me to cook at lower temperatures if I want and still get the benefit of non-stick. So you can see here this is beginning to smoke, so I'm going to let this go for about another minute. I'll just continue to swirl that oil around, making sure that that whole base, and if I'm going to be cooking along the sidewalls at all, making sure that they get all good and covered in oil. And yeah, I'm just going to let that smoke for about a minute. That's going to develop just a thin layer of polymerized or hardened oil on the inside surface of that skillet, which is going to be enough to prevent our food from sticking. I should add, this oil shouldn't be getting super dark when you're doing this. It might darken a little bit, but if it becomes black or if it ever catches flame, you have got it way too hot. You just want to bring it up to its smoking point. You don't want to get it any hotter than that, and just coat that inside surface of the pan. So this has been going for about a minute now, so I'm going to take this off. And I am cooking with 2 skillets tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and pre-season this one right now as well. So we are beginning to smoke here, so again I'm just going to let it go for another minute. I should add, if you're doing this in an enclosed place like I am in my tent right now, I just have the door flaps open so I can get some fresh air in here. You don't want to be doing this in a closed environment, obviously. You don't want to be breathing the smoke in. But typically in the outdoors you're cooking over a fire outside, so it's not too big of a deal. So it's been about a minute for this pan as well. Gonna call that good. So that's it. Just like that, we have both of our skillets pre-seasoned, ready for cooking. Now, because this oil was brought up to its smoking temperature, you can cook in it and it'll be fine. I prefer just to discard it, and when I cook, start with fresh oil. That way I'm not getting any additional flavors from bringing that oil up to its smoking point. So I'm just going to discard this oil quickly, but prior to doing that I just want to show you the color here. So this oil is just slightly darker than it was when we began. If this was really dark, really dark brown or black, that means that you've got it too hot. But that kind of golden brown color, that means that you've got it up to the right temperature, that your pan is well seasoned. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this oil, and then we'll get cooking. The potatoes take a lot longer than the eggs will, so we'll get them cooking first. I've got my pre-seasoned pan here. I've just put a little bit of new oil in it to fry the potatoes. Another little piece of advice I can give is when you're cooking food in oil, let the oil come up to temperature before you put your food in. If you have a hot pan and you put cold oil in it and put your food in right away, your food is more likely to stick. Or if you have a cold pan with cold oil and you put your food in it and then put that on the heat, you're likely going to end up with sticking as well. The oil is meant to be up to temperature prior to putting your food in there. So I'm going to let this pan sit here, let the oil get good and hot, and then we'll add the potatoes. A good way to know if your oil is up to temperature is just flick a little water in it, and it should pop and sizzle immediately. So right now I know that this isn't quite up to temperature, not quite to where I want it, so I'm just going to give it another minute or two to warm up. So we'll test this oil again. That's what you're looking to hear. So I'll go ahead and add my potatoes now. You can see none of them are sticking at all. It's looking just about perfect. Alright, potatoes are certainly done. Now time for the eggs. So realistically I could have cooked the eggs in the other pan. I did want to demonstrate the eggs in the stainless steel pan. I think a lot of people these days are opting to use stainless steel, and eggs are one of those foods where it's kind of hit and miss, and I know lots of people struggle with it, but with this pre-seasoning method, I've never had eggs stick. I did put just a little bit of oil in here just to act as a barrier for the eggs. I'm gonna let this pan heat up for a minute or two, and then we'll drop the eggs in. Now, unfortunately I broke a yolk, so we'll do our best to salvage it, but a lot of times when people drop eggs and I see them right away, they go with their spatula and start poking and prodding at them to see if they're stuck. And if they have stuck, they're scraping at them trying to get them unstuck. The eggs are pretty sensitive, they're very delicate, so when you drop it into your skillet, just leave it. If there is a little bit of sticking, a lot of times as it cooks it will actually unstick. So just let it cook, let it do its thing. The stove is definitely hotter than I wanted it. My oil's smoking, which I didn't really want, but that's okay. So I'm just going to let this egg cook, let it set, and then we'll give it a flip. We'll add a little salt and pepper though. Love a good peppery egg. You can see no sticking. Trying to be delicate with it. It's right there. No sticking. I think I might try to flip this real quick. Even after flipping it, still no sticking. See if we can't do a second egg without breaking the yolk. And I've added no extra oil to this pan either. This one's looking a lot better. A little salt and pepper to top it off. Once again, no sticking. Give this one a flip. So there you have it, folks. Simple way you can pre-season your skillets to prevent any food from sticking. Both the potatoes and the eggs came out excellent. No sticking whatsoever. Now for cleanup, all I gotta do is wipe those out, put them away, and I'm done for the night. So appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one.